My introduction into the church came later in life. I didn't get the opportunity to do a mission or grow up with the teachings. I actually grew up in a very violent alcoholic home. My dad was a violent drunk, and he didn't have a lot of respect for boundaries. He'd been married 5 different times. He was just an angry man, and unfortunately, he kind of taught me to be just as angry. You know, I didn't have to have the inebriation. I was just angry all the time. And so I spent my life not only being terrified, but being angry. And so that leads to bad decisions, many mistakes. And I ruined my life before it even really got started. My grandmother was a very firm and solid example for me, but she passed away whenever I was 18 and ended up spending 7 years in prison. I did a total of 7 years on a 10-year sentence, and it really didn't teach me to be a better person. It kind of put me around the kind of people that taught me to be a worse kind of person, taught me how to do things differently and try to, think of things in a different perspective in order to get away with it, not in order to not, do the mistakes. Well, my mother always told me there's 2 kinds of people in the world, those who read the book and those who have to get beat with it. I'm a get beat with it kind of guy. I never learned just by reading the book one time. I had to mess up over and over and over again. And every time that my now ex-wife, every time she and I would get into an argument or a fight, I'd go outside, I'd smoke a cigarette, drink a beer. And so that was kind of my only escape. And every time I was outside doing that, the missionaries would walk by. And I'd heard so many different things about the church. I'd heard all the assumptions of what the temple was, what happened in the temple, what the church was about, the kind of things that happened every Sunday in a church building. The rumors were fantastic, really. And so by the time that it got to the moment where I invited the missionaries in, I thought I had it figured out. So I was like, well, I'll invite you in, we'll talk, but I'll put it to the test, And so I kind of regurgitated a lot of the nonsense that I'd heard from everybody else, and realized that I was just talking nonsense. I felt more like a fool than I did anything else. I continued with the lessons. I got to the point where we had the lesson about the word of wisdom. And so the word of wisdom was kind of a hard hitter for me, because it's like, man, there's a lot I have to give up. Here I have this word of wisdom in front of me, and I had to decide, which direction am I going to go? So this was kind of my first big deciding factor, how serious am I at this point? And I prayed about it. And I really felt like it was true. So I put everything down, put everything at one time. But I had a relapse on my 3rd day. We was having an argument. Out of habit, I did what I always do. I picked up the cigarettes and went outside. I smoked one. And so guilt wasn't something that I was very familiar with. And I smoked that cigarette after I had made a commitment and everything else. And then I was so overwhelmed with guilt. I've never been an emotional person. And when I realized that I was on the verge of tears, fighting this guilt, I knew what the problem was. And I went upstairs, I hit my knees, I prayed about it. And that was the last time I touched a cigarette. And that was a life changer. It actually made deep, profound changes to my life, to how I looked at my relationships, to how I dealt with the people around me, to even dealing with myself. Even the relationship I have with myself had to change. After I joined the church, I let it change me. I made the necessary decisions. And one of the things I've learned in this church is I have a true testimony of prayer. I've had unbelievable, miraculous things happen to me. Life wouldn't be the same had I made any other decisions. So I never really knew Jesus Christ throughout my life. I knew he was there. I had a basic understanding of God, and it wasn't until later that once I started investigating the church and I started understanding really who Jesus Christ was to me and what he had done for all of us, I've realized that he's always been there to lend me strength and support. I continually struggle with the memories, the anger, and the frustration of just life in itself. And it's at those times that I remember that Christ is there, that he sacrificed himself for everyone. And so understanding that, I understand that he bore a lot of those burdens for me, and that with the, miracles that I've seen in my life, I know that I can just rely on him. I can pray about it, put it in his hands and forget about it. And I'll be taken care of.